Alright, will be time to take a look at the next carrier. This is the very slow. Now on to the fit. Currently 4.6 thousand called DPS. This is the build that is between the DPS and tank build. Basically you have DPS and you have a solid tank, although the current rigs on the ship are for DPS. 3 adaptives, dual capacitor batteries, dual armor repairs, and 1 afterburner. In the medium slots I have 1 command burst module, dual neutralizers, 1 web, and 1 scrambler. Now the armor command works in the same way as the shield command burst module. They give you a decent boost on resistance, they give your fleet a lot more armor repair, and the armored command burst will give your fleet more armor resistance and overall less capacitor use for your ship and for your fleet. Although I've been told that your ship will not get the armor repair bonus, but the resistance bonus will be the same. So I guess your ship will not get all the command burst bonuses, but in the end the resistance is all that you need. The capacitor lasts 1 minute and 16 seconds, and everything else is the same. The speed is 129.1 meter per second, which is really nice. 5.08 light year is the jump range, which is still really nice. I think all capital ships have the same jumping range. Now on to the rigs. This is where I had a little bit fun with the rigs. I have dual combat rig integrations that focus on DPS and alpha damage on the fighters. And the third rig in the middle is for rate of fire. In the engineering rigs I have dual rig integrations that focus on maximum possible capacity performance, and 1 normal rig that increases the capacitor volume, which is overall really nice, and I think it runs really well. I just wanted to experiment with a build like that, just to see the differences in DPS. Now, I will show you some different builds that I come up with the carriers and with carriers overall. This is one of my personal favorite builds with a dual firepower control arrays and one micro updrive guide. Basically, I find this optimal, have decent DPS, the fighters are quite fast and the resistances are very nice. Now let's take a look at the ship once all the modules are being activated. And of course I will turn on the sensor mode, which is very important if you want to improve the lock-on speed on this ship. 5170.36 DPS with both of the fighter control arrays active. 1.1 million is the effective hit point. 314.06 meter per second is the afterburner speed, which is not that slow. 4 minutes is the capacitor time, which is overall really nice. So far, a very solid build. I feel like this ship does have a little bit better DPS than the Chimera. 500 km is the optimal range, while the fighter optimal range is 15.63 kilometers, which is really nice. The fighters can orbit at that distance outside of the web range on most ships, which might help the fighters survive a little bit longer. Now I did this with the previous two carriers and I will do it with this one. Not a build that I would actually actively use, but just to see the maximum possible DPS with the current setup. With one fighter control array, the DPS is 5,300, okay. With a dual fighter control arrays, the DPS is 5,900, almost 6,000 DPS. With 3 activated, the DPS is 6,369.71. With 4 active, the DPS will be 6,565.86, which is still really nice. And with the 5th one, the DPS is 6,638.44, which is really nice. I feel like this ship has a little bit more DPS than the Chimera, or they are roughly around the same. Well, overall, a very decent DPS output on this ship. Now you can do a fit like this with dual adaptives, dual firepower control arrays, one capacitor battery, one micro updrive guide, one armor repair and one afterburner. Or you can sacrifice a little bit more DPS for a little bit more tank, and this is the build with triple adaptives, which looks really nice and overall I'm very happy with that. You can sacrifice one firepower control array with one capacitor battery, and let me just show you the resistances with this build. Now this is not a tank build because the ship does not have any tank rigs, but this is a balanced build between tank and DPS. So far the resistances are 86, 81, 78 and 77. Overall looks very nice, does appear to be balanced, and I'm quite happy with the result. After all, keep in mind, no tank rigs, and these are the resistances without the tank rigs, which are really nice. Now I can slap one damage control instead of the capacitor battery, which will give me plus 8.64 cold resistance on everything. So it will be interesting to see how the values look with the damage control. The effective hit points raised to 1.7 million, 87, 83, 80 and 79, which is actually better than before and overall looks very nice. So yeah, I can definitely get some ridiculous tank out of these ships. And with the damage control active, 5.2 million effective hit points, 96, 94, 93 and 93% resistance. Which is really nice for a DPS built ship. So I am very excited to actually change the rigs into tank rigs, and very excited to see how this ship will work with the tank rigs. The DPS should be a little bit lower, but the tank should be ridiculous, and I'm very excited for that. Now, let me align myself towards the station. Sensor mode has been activated. And now let's destroy some ships. Now for this ship I use dual Templars and one of the millimeter fighters. Thought to see how the lasers do on this ship. For the Thanatos I will most likely use the Galante fighters, or a mix between the Galante and millimeter fighters, we will see. The overall performance of all these ships is, I would say, very balanced. Although the millimeter carrier does have the highest DPS out of the 4 carriers. Now I might be wrong. We'll have to see how the Thanatos will perform. Maybe the Thanatos will have higher DPS, who knows, we will see. But so far, the highest DPS output that I did see on the carriers that I did fly was on the millimeter carrier. It had almost 8000 DPS. Of course, without the nanocore will improve the DPS quite a bit on all of these ships. But I personally don't need nanocores, so the default DPS value is already very nice. The second highest DPS on these carriers is on, I think on the Archon. I felt like the Chimera did have a little bit lower DPS, but the Chimera that did have better damage application because of the explosion velocity bonus that the ship has. Now, I think the fighters on the Archon will have a higher chance to survive because they orbit outside of the web range. I think the Thanatos actually has fighter hit point bonus. We'll have to double check that. So the Thanatos fighters might be very tanky and hard to kill, while the Archon fighters will orbit outside of the web range, and that's how they will survive. Of course, they might still get hit, but they'll be safe from the webs, which is important. So far, absolutely no issue to clear anything. As you can see, they are going through their ships without any problem. Even with the EM, the resistance that all of these Explorer ships come with, they still go down very quickly. And there is very little difference between the although I think I would still prefer to use the fighter combination that I used on the previous 2 carriers, because I believe in PvP that the millimeter fighters would do a little bit better, although these Templars are excellent to melt shields. So I guess in the end, having a mix is very nice. You can also use one damage type if you like, but if your target has the reactive shield or reactive armor hardener, then having a fighter combination is going to be very important, because the reactive hardeners cannot defend that well against multiple incoming damage types. So far, I'm actually very happy with the carriers. Still very surprised at how much I did actually enjoy flying them, because you all know that I mostly fly cruisers. In the last couple weeks, couple months, I did fly some of the big ships, some of the battleships, of course, and I still do enjoy them. But I think I still like cruisers the most, because cruisers are practically very universal, very agile, and you can practically use them everywhere. And of course, cruisers have great implications in PvP. You can actually still use cruisers in PvE as well, although battleships can do that aspect a little bit better. But in the end, if you have a very decently built cruiser, you can do missions without a problem. A little fun fact, with the Ordos I actually can get very good clear times for high sec encounters. With the Ordos you can easily get around 120 kilometer range with the medium missiles, or you can get a average range of around 90 kilometers with a decent build with around 1,500 DPS, which is still really nice. And you can clear missions really quickly with that ship, surprisingly. Surprisingly that's the case. I wasn't really expecting that, but yeah, it turned out that it's actually a really good ship for missions. There is the carrier, the fighters have docked, and now it's time to go towards the next mission. You know, it's ridiculous how safe carriers can be for low sec missions. And I'm saying safe because not many ships can tackle a carrier. You can kill any tackle in basically couple seconds. All you need to do is lock the target, activate the micro warp drive guide, and send your fighters towards the tackle ship.
Warp drive
The fighters go 11,000 kilometers, 11,000 meters per second. So there isn't much that can escape. Maybe a Talar command with a medium micro warp drive will be able to outrun the fighters, but a interceptor, a faction frigate, a cruiser will get melted by any carrier. So having the micro warp drive guide is definitely very important if you plan to fly these ships. If your carrier does not have a micro warp drive guide, then yeah, you can get tackled by small ships. But if you have the micro warp drive guide, then you are pretty safe against everything. The problem will be if you get jumped by several big ships that are tanky, then yeah, then you might have a problem. But for small ships, and most low sec hunters use small ships for hunting, for tackling. I'm speaking from my personal experience. I use small ships for tackle as well. For example, a small ship can be counted as the Ortus, can be counted as the Stratios. Sometimes I use the Astro for tackle, but that is very, very rare. And a carrier can easily kill all of the ships. Thankfully, I haven't encountered any carrier in low sec at the moment, but I believe very soon I will encounter carriers in low sec. Now I know that someone did try to use a Rorqual for low sec story run. Not quite sure how that ended, but there is couple insurance claims on the Rorqual if you take a look at the market. So yeah, we can all guess how that ended, I think. As for carriers, most of the carriers are in nullsec, in big corporations, big alliances, and that's where carriers should be used. That's what I personally think about carriers. I would say you can use it in lowsec, but don't use it alone. I would still use couple ships as escort or couple ships as support. The main problem would be to transport the carrier to the storyline mission location, but with one alt that can warp you to 500 kilometers from the mission beacon, you can easily run storyline missions in a carrier, because any tackle ship has to approach you, and if you're sitting at 500 kilometers away from the mission beacon, then yeah, most likely will be safe. Although there is a little trick that I'll talk about in one of the next PvP video parts that I will do. But so far, running really smooth. I like actually I'm starting to like the Templars, and I think for the tank part, for these ships, I will use the anti-aircraft fighters just to see how they will work. The anti-aircraft fighters are designed to intercept smaller targets, so very curious to see what's the DPS output on those fighters, but I believe it should be a little bit lower. However, they should have higher tracking, they should be faster. Although it's kind of funny, because even the current fighters that I use, the heavier fighters, although they're still light fighters, but they're classified as a little bit heavier, they still catch frigates very easily. So technically you can use both, although I prefer the heavier fighters because they have higher DPS and they still have enough tracking to hit small ships, and of course they are still very, very quick, so they can catch them very easily. Not quite sure when we will get fighters that can web, point and scramble. When we get fighters that can scramble, point and web, that will be fun, because then I can easily replace the point and scrambler on this ship with another module. So that will be very fun. And killing those fighters that can throw points and webs on your ship is kinda difficult. That is from my EVE Online experience. So that was very nice, and that was actually very quick. These things clear missions very quickly and very efficiently. So I'm definitely impressed and very surprised at how fun carriers can actually be. So I will dock and I will wrap up the part 1 of the Archon. I will do part 2 on all of these carriers once I finish with the DPS builds on all of these ships. That means the last carrier will be the Thanatos. And well, with that being said, hope that you enjoyed, hope that you like the builds that I show you here. And well, with that being said, next time when I return, I'll be flying the Thanatos, and well, I'm very curious how that ship will work. So stay safe, fly safe, and I'll see you next time.